Alright, we're back. Let's talk about synergies. How do you put together a really strong build and arrange the mods in such a way that everything about the build is like cohesive and collective? We'll start with Dart, because Dart just came out and I had to do this with Dart. Shoots a barb into the target, deals 15% of the damage in a blast initially. Damage modified by their size. Okay, cool. There's a thing to worry about. Size. As burn. Okay, cool. There's a thing to worry about. We worry about burn. Each dart deals plus 1% burn damage per total darts lodged into its target. We want multiple darts. Darts have a base duration of 2 seconds, modified by size and burn duration. So, I want lots of darts, I want fat darts, and I want long burn darts. Viper gives plus 20% burn duration. That's something cool that we could think about. So if we're doing Dart and Viper, how do we take advantage of both? I know siege weaponry exists, increases the fire rate every time you fire. So we could do Dart, Viper, and siege weaponry to shoot as many darts as possible, as quickly as possible. Going back up to Viper, when you take a hull hit, you disgorge venom strike projectiles toward the offender. Does that work with us hitting ourselves? Most of these types of effects do in this game. So now we'll have darts with Viper. We'll hit ourselves with siege weaponry. Viper has 15% hull damage resistance. That'll affect the siege weaponry. We'll also get a little Viper thing going out. That's pretty cool. So we could do that. We gotta heal ourselves. We could take regeneration. We could do rapid reconstruction. We could do regenerative shields, and we could split it with Gemini. Where's Gemini? Somewhere around here. Is it down there? The heck is Gemini? Why don't I see it? Oh, Gemini. So we could split half the damage to our shield with Gemini. We could take reflexive shield with that, so then when we split the damage to the shield with Gemini, we'll shoot a reflexive shield shot as well. That's pretty cool. And then you do the experimentation with that, right? You pick 4 or 5 mods and just go play the game. And then when you're there picking mods, maybe I want corrosion. Maybe I don't want corrosion. Corrosion's going to reduce my damage by 10%. I probably don't want corrosion. But I want purification. That's going to increase the weapon damage. Even though that reduces the weapon damage, most of my damage is going to be burn. So purification's probably a net positive. And then that's where the sheet comes in. I'm actually not going to bring it up because I don't want the stream to freak out again. But the sheet was me realizing that you can get to about level 40 before you really stop gaining levels in the game. So if I have all these different things I want to do, then if I put them on a list, I can kind of focus on that list and say, what order do I want to get these things in? Do I need Essence Sap? If I'm getting Rapid Reconstruction, Essence Sap, your whole strength cannot regenerate. That's a bad combo. But if I'm getting the shield regeneration, then I can do that, and then I can get the extra little bonuses that come with that. Maybe there's something better than doing reflexive shields. I haven't made that build that we're talking about right now. I can mess with it later. I probably don't want Omni Shield because I'm dealing damage to myself with siege weaponry. I don't want to kill myself. And Omni Shield will do that. Those are some of the thoughts of how you put together these different types of builds. Let's talk about some of the sweet combos that are very well known. Mini Barrier. Amp gives you a damage bonus on your weapon, but it's got crappy durability. It's also a very, very fast cooldown. So the positives are weapon damage and cooldown, the negative is the durability is trash. I know a way to deal with that, called Barrier. Barrier removes damage of your shield exceeding 35% of your maximum shield durability, up to a limit of your maximum shield durability. If my shield has 50 health, that means the biggest hit I can take is like 18, and it will absorb the next 50. Things in this game don't tend to hit you harder than like 100 max, so I'm going to be able to absorb most of like the biggest hit in the game. So I can take a Barrier to deal with the low durability. Where is it? The durability is 50. If I take flash shielding, I'll reduce that durability down by 40%, but I'll get a massive amount of cooldown. If I take Tempest Break, that gives me more reduced durability plus faster cooldown. So I get a really fast cooldown shield that Barrier does all the work on, right? I don't need any durability on the shield. The text after the comma, that's my fault. I broke Mini Barrier and Chimeric had to nerf it. Sorry. It's still pretty good though. This actually works real well with things like Assault because you get negative shield durability on it. If Barrier is doing all the work, I don't care about the negative shield durability. It works really well on things like Engineer. Same thing, negative shield durability. So I can put together this set of mods to make Amp into a really tanky shield. And probably the best thing with it is emergency systems, right? That shield's going to pop often, and emergency shields is going to go off. You get it down to like a 3.5 second cooldown, and emergency system takes a third of that. So that's a really good defense. That's called Mini Barrier. I think I named it. I don't know. Mini Barrier's well known. It's a standard, well-known thing that's out there. What else is really strong? We talked about Torrent. Torrent is the highest damage weapon in the game, but it has really bad range, so it's a really bad primary weapon to use by itself. What Torrent does do, though, is it attacks so fast with so many projectiles that it's a great effect delivery system. Adaptive armor procs every time you take damage. If we find a way to make Torrent deal damage to us via discharge, I can proc adaptive armor really, really well. Channeling gives you a ton of regen and a ton of shield effect power. Core shielding reduces all that damage you're dealing to yourself and makes the stacks last longer. Since you're doing discharge anyway, you can go ahead and pick up reflexive shield. That's a little package, Torrent plus all those effects. That gives you a bunch of offense and defense. That's another package that's pretty well known. I call that package the Matrix, and the reason why that was called Matrix is because it was initially used to buff Temporal up to a really, really strong level where bullets would stop. You get to become Neo from the Matrix. The current best use of that is Siphon, because Siphon also increases the shield effect power. Tempest, or Reflexive Shield, and Discharge are based on your shield effect power, so you're just getting a giant feedback loop of everything feeding itself. Siphon's kind of the best way to take care of all of that. It's led to kind of a frustrating situation from a balance perspective, and I've complained about this. If you're taking Torrent, the best thing to do with it is to take Siphon plus Sentinel plus all these other effects and do the Siphon Matrix. There's no other build that uses Torrent that can compete with this build. The same thing applies to Sentinel, the same thing applies to Siphon. All three of these mods now are kind of tied together in my mind, because there is no better way to take advantage of any single one of them than putting them all together in one pile and making this Uber build out of it. But that may change in the future, but that's just a concept to think about. Blade and Battery. Blade is a weapon that, when you take Blade, it's like you shoot a blade, it kind of sucks. It hits a guy and it dies. A battery immediately gives you 3 more blades. When you get a bunch of blades, it's really good. There's the funny effect that Engineer only gives you 2 more blades. Battery gives you more blades than Engineer does. There's other effects that I did not know for a very, very long time, where Overseer doubles the amount of blades after all other mods are applied. So you take Battery, that gets you up to 4 blades. Oh, and then Engineer for some reason applies after Overseer. That makes it even worse. But that gets you up to 6 blades. That gets you up to 8 blades. And then Overseer doubles all of them and gets you to 16 blades. Because adding blades tends to make Blade better, Battery, Blade with Overseer, and Fusillade is just this massive, crazy build. What do you do with that? How do you make that good? Because Blade's not the best weapon. We do the thing that Engineer does, which is you make all these crappy constructs, you apply shielded constructs to those guys, you blow that shield up as quickly as possible so volatile shields will proc, and now you're blowing the screen up over and over and over and over. You're shotgunning the screen with exploding blades every 3 seconds. That's crazy. Currently the most powerful combo in the game. Architect puts together, or you can have one construct of any type. It's a super construct, but if you ever make a second construct, the first one blows up. You can just kind of manually detonate your constructs, right? That's just a little hidden bonus in Architect. If you team that up with Loaded Mines, and there's an achievement in Steam for this, to activate Retribution without taking damage from an enemy, called a bulge strategy. There's a whole line of bulge strategy builds out there now. The first discovery on this was Grenade, right? Because I could do a Loaded Mines with Grenade. I can put Splinter on the grenade, so the mine will make a grenade that makes grenades that blow up. And that was really cool. But how do we do this consistently? If we get Omni Shield, Retribution becomes really easy to proc. But I have to deal damage to myself. So you can start with ideas like, and hopefully some people have thought of doing stuff like this. This is how it came around. Somebody tried antimatter rounds. The problem is antimatter rounds will kill you. There's nothing that stops antimatter rounds from killing you. If you're low on health, you can't shoot anymore or you'll kill yourself. Something that doesn't kill you, though, is discharge. So I can discharge, but that doesn't deal hull damage. Retribution only procs off of hull damage. What I can do there, then, is I can get Gemini to apply half of that discharge to my hull. Because my hull's tiny anyway from picking up Omni Shield, now I can proc Retribution by hitting myself with discharge. That's really cool. The problem with that is I then run out of health, and I don't really have a good way to heal myself. There's a really good way to heal yourself by dealing damage to enemies in this game. It's called Essence Sap. So as soon as you have Architect, plus Loaded Mines, plus Retribution, you can then spend the next 20 levels putting together this Discharge, plus Omni Shield, plus Gemini, plus Essence Sap thing, and now you'll drop a mine every time you shoot. And that just covers the screen in bullets. Grenade isn't even the best way to use it anymore. When Dart came out, it was discovered that the Dart attack rate was kind of sort of perfect to put mines down as quickly as possible. So Dart was instantly the best weapon in the game. Omni Shield was recently changed from minus 90% to minus 85%. That was to reduce the power of Dart. It wasn't a buff to Omni Shield, because Omni Shield doesn't care about the hull. It was to make it harder to proc Discharge, so that you can't take burst fire at the same time. There's other ways people have figured out how to get past this, and I'll run some of those builds here. I'm not even doing it with Omni Shield. The one I just recently did it with, which seems to, or with Dart. The one I did it with already is Salvo, which kind of shoots about as fast as dart, right? 2.5 a second versus 2 a second. So it's a little easier to proc it with salvo. And you just cover the screen in salvo missiles, and it's silly. That's another well-known combo. Things like Vortex, which deals damage to yourself, plus Stealth, which reduces the amount of self-damage, right? That's a really good build. We can kind of sort of get into a minor balance rant. It's fine. But like Vortex, you deal damage to the enemy by dealing damage to yourself. I don't think Vortex is a particularly good weapon in the endgame, because Dying Star exists, which deals damage to enemies by dealing damage to yourself. And when you pick Dying Star, you can then pick up Hidden Power, which removes your weapon and increases the damage you deal to everything. You can't do that with Vortex. So Vortex is a decent weapon, but the biggest problem with Vortex is that Dying Star exists. You can't, all these mods interact with each other, right? They're not individual mods that do things by themselves. They're all relative to all the other mods in the game. There's no reason to try to pump up Vortex when you can take Hidden Power plus Dying Star and you can throw that on a Crash build, and that's just way better. Because Vortex is kind of made for Crash builds. Right at the top. Where does it say? It doesn't say. Oh, down on the bottom. Rate of Fire. Rate of Fire has no effect. So when you take something like Hullbreaker, which I think Vortex was designed for, and that has that negative 30% rate of fire, Vortex doesn't care. Vortex is just as good on Hullbreaker as it is on any other body. But Dying Star exists. You could just take Dying Star, and it's better. Another cool combo is Warp Strike plus Splinter. I don't think anything in the game really tells you this. Splinter can't hit the same target that a splinter came from, right? You shoot a guy with a bullet, it splinters off. That splinter can't hit the same guy. This used to be the case. It's not the case anymore. I think that's a lot more balanced. Didn't make any sense to me the way it was. If your splinter screen wraps using Warp Strike, it can hit the same target. So if you hit something and you get the one that it's most applicable with is like Split Shot or Railgun. You hit something with Split Shot, you get that little tiny splinter that comes off. If you get a ton of velocity by Calibrate and picking up Saturation Fire, so that little tiny splinter can make it off the screen and wrap all the way around before it degenerates, you can hit the same target 10 times with one bullet for every time you hit it with Splinter, Warp Strike, Split Shot. So you can really build a critical mass of damage. Split Shot doesn't do a lot of damage, right? 17 damage, 3 projectiles. A lot of people think Split Shot sucks when the game comes out, or when they get the game. Split Shot is one of the most scalable mods in the game. And the thing you always have to do with Split Shot, because its damage sucks, is stack Corrosion. Corrosion doesn't care about how hard the bullet that was used to deliver it hits. Corrosion just does corrosion. So weapons like Split Shot or Torrent that hit very, very quickly and don't hit for crap, but apply a lot of corrosion stacks, you can use corrosion to deal almost all your damage with weapons like that. So that's another little combo that's out there. And I think that's kind of all the primary combos I can think of in the game. Everything else is just kind of experimentation, like I mentioned in the beginning. Sorta see what works, Is Convergence really good? Sure. Do you need it on every build that you want to hit stuff with? Not really. I guess here's one. Grenade. Because Grenade does all these little clusters, and you're like, oh, blast radius, high explosives, great. Oh, concentrated blast, awesome. Concentrated blast is a net 0 on Grenade, because even though it does so much more blast damage, that reduction in blast radius has the same effect that the bonus damage does on Grenade. So if you're just getting Grenade and you don't want to invest too much into the weapon, you could... Concentrated blast still turns on antimatter rounds, so you might still want it, But high explosives adds a ton of bonus damage to grenade. Concentrated effect is 0 damage bonus on grenade. Those are little things you kind of gotta play the game and talk about it and to really understand. I think that's kind of it. Everything else is just, like I said, that's why I made that spreadsheet, so that I could go through it. And I'll make this a YouTube video, and I will throw that spreadsheet in this YouTube video so people can look at it and see where some of the thoughts are with all this type of stuff. But yeah, like Helix right now, not really good, because 45 damage a second for 4 seconds isn't enough. Halo is really good though, because Halo just does a ton of damage, twice as much right off the bat just from the ignite, and 180 by itself. Hopefully that was useful. What do we have to do? We did Stealth Breaker, we did Warp Blade, we did Siphon Matrix, Salvo.